Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Monster Party.
Monster Party!
Monster Party!
Monsters! Lots of monsters.
We like monsters.
We do.
But yeah, we like monsters, we like sci-fi, we like fantasy, superheroes, all that kind of nerdy, cool, geek stuff. We also, Larry, we like to laugh.
Well, some of us do.
Doesn't everybody?
Come on, you know us, we're laughers.
Some people really like comedy.
Yeah. And so we have a very, very special topic for
we do.
This show, and that is horror comedy.
Horror comedy!
Horror comedy!
Yeah.
So, but before we head on to that subject, let me introduce myself. I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James GONIS.
And we have some great guests for this one.
Matt, this is awesome. I'm in awe of these guys.
Me too.
We have two.
I think I'm in more awe than you are.
What? No. I'm in.
Let's have an awe off.
No, I am.
Okay, we have comedian and actor, celebrity, Neil Gargiulo.
All right.
Director, also actor, comedian, Brian James O'Connell.
All right.
Yeah. Ow!
Thank you very much, guys.
Girls, you're both pretty.
Yeah, this is going to help you with the ladies, this show. Yeah.
Not true.
The thing, it's tiresome getting referred to as a celebrity as often as I do.
Well, I
What aren't you in right now?
You're in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I'm in there's a book club I'm in.
Yeah.
And
That's where I know you from.
yeah.
Horror comedy.
Horror comedy.
Horror
Comedy. We know it. We love it. And you guys have kind of a very, very special connection to this topic. You have produced, written, starred in, directed a horror comedy of your own.
Absolutely. We just made our first film. Our comedy group, Dr. God, made our first film, Bloodsucking Bastards, which was the
Bloodsucking
Bastards, which opened the SLAMDANCE Film Festival this year.
Nice.
And actually just sold and will be getting theatrical distribution this year.
Oh, congratulations!
And my good friend over here, the more handsome one, is Brian James O'Connell.
Yes.
He directed it and was our quarterback all.
Yeah,
all last year.
we got really lucky that we hooked up with the Fortress Features guys. They did the Collector and the Collection.
Yeah.
Another
Love
great
those movies.
And then maybe this year productions. Brandon Evans and Colleen Hard were great, and they've been friends of ours, and so they brought us in. Brought Dr. God in to sort of be like a one-stop shopping thing, and then Justin helped produce.
Justin Ware, one of the guys from Dr. God.
Very good.
Also in Dr. God, Sean Cowig and David Park.
Yeah, so we got very lucky to work with a good crew, and then bringing guys like Fran Kranz from Cabin in the Woods, who was in it, and Pedro Pascal, the Red Viper. Over
Nice.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
a lot of it. Joey Kern. We got very lucky.
So, can you tell us a little bit about the sort of general storyline of the picture?
Gist of the
the 25 words or less TV guide.
Yeah.
I don't wanna- no spoilers.
Yeah,
but
for our listeners.
Well, tonally speaking, it gets the comparison of Shaun of the Dead meets Office Space.
I'm there.
But with vampires instead of zombies.
Great.
company.
really?
Our vampires do not sparkle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well,
Whose hand do I shake first?
Everyone's.
Yeah.
sparkling vampires.
No, the basic thing is there's Fran Kranz plays a guy named Evan who works in sort of a shitty corporate job that we've all done before, and he's up for a promotion, and his boss, Ted, who's played by Joel Murray from Mad Men, brings in his rival from college, Max, and then slowly but surely the office starts going to the undead, and then Evan has to convince his two buddies of what's going on, and then they go in and save the girl, and then we start cutting off fucking heads and putting blood everywhere.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Man, do I want to see that.
And we have the script right here, and for the next hour and a half, we're gonna read through the script.
No.
Line by line.
No, we're going to save that. So our
Maybe
listeners,
they go to the movies.
yeah, because we like to go to the
So
movies.
we're not going to do that?
No.
I made costumes.
No, because I want to know about horror comedy,
comedies.
because I know that you're very passionate about
Well, I
horror
am very,
comedy.
and I could,
As am I.
and obviously,
And you
you guys are
obviously.
too. You wouldn't have made this movie.
Yeah, I grew
because
up
horror
on that
comedy's
shit.
not really, it's not my favorite thing.
It's
know?
not your favorite.
No,
well, no, I mean,
no.
maybe not your favorite thing, but it is when you see a horror comedy that's done right.
Yeah,
say
yeah,
like Shaun of the Dead,
Okay,
for
okay,
example.
yes, okay.
I'm always amazed when they get a movie right.
Yeah.
When they play the horror real.
Yeah.
That's
the horror
that's
is
the key,
the straight
right?
man.
Sure.
And
It's very rare.
yeah. I mean, going back to like Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein,
Which I also love.
yeah, one of the greatest horror comedies of all time. I mean, they really play all the monsters are played straight.
And what's the date on that? It's like in 48?
To the internet.
If there was only some kind of machine,
It's funny that you bring up Abbott Costello because I teach comedy classes, and I always I say that there's basically just 4 scenes. There's straight absurd, character driven, alternate reality, and real. And obviously Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein is an alternate reality scene, just one long one. But I always point out to them that like straight absurd, like Who's on First from Abbott Costello is arguably the greatest straight absurd scene of all time, and it's historically important because it's the first time the funny looking one in the group was the straight man. So Chris Farley doesn't open a movie on Christmas Day. Will Ferrell doesn't have a career. Seth Rogen doesn't have a career without Who's on First.
Right,
So I'd like
right.
to give comedy credit where credit is due to those guys.
Well, and they were great, and I guess a lot of people don't know though that they really are the ones who everyone sort of recognizes as the people who made that bit famous. But that bit was going around on the vaudeville circuit for a long time, and it took them to really solidify it in the minds of people.
I did
forever.
not know. I
Yeah.
did not know that, Matt. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
That's right.
So
but
Abbott and Costello are a bunch of rotten thieves, is what you're saying.
not so good. Not you thought they were
Well,
great.
isn't it? Look.
Crucify
No.
them.
I've heard that famous comedians typically, will sometimes steal or borrow stuff from other writers or comics. I mean, isn't that true?
No, well, I like to think that when that does happen, and there are people who just flat out do it, but you inhale so much stuff. And Louis actually covers it in an episode of Louis with Dane Cook, who's on the other side. Yeah, but I've said that for a long time that you have so much coming in that it's sometimes hard to go, oh, that's not my original thought. And I guess the question for integrity becomes, when do you walk away from? Do you walk away from it when you find out, when you realize it, or do you keep going? And then that's where that kind of comes.
Yeah, there are certain guys that everything that comes to their head, they think it starts there.
Right.
I think the thing with like the vaudeville thing is sort of similar to Second City and their reviews. There are Second City sketches that are 30 years old, but 20 years ago is the 2 guys that you associate with it,
Right.
Because they crushed it, and that's how that place sort of works.
Yeah. And you can say, like, back in the vaudeville days, that it was. Nowadays, we're a little bit more. We put more pressure on a comic to create his own material. Where back then, it was kind of a given that different comics would do the same jokes.
Yeah.
And I mean, Milton Berle apparently had so many jokes that he bought that people would raid his files and then sell the same jokes back to him.
Yeah.
No.
Yes, that's right.
That's really great.
Yeah.
Horror and comedy sort of went hand in hand for a while. I mean, even back in the beginning of film, like in the silent days, I think Harold Lloyd and Buster Keaton were already doing sort of horror comedies, like a little bit like Ghost and Mr. Chicken, a little
The
bit
classic
like
haunted houses and
Buster Keaton did that?
I think Buster Keaton did do that. Actually, I think he did it in. He was like maybe Harold Lloyd was the first, but Buster Keaton did a movie called Haunted House in
That's correct.
1921.
Wow.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
My mentor Miles Stroth once told me that the invention of laughter came through fear. Like the first time that laughter happened, it was it was one caveman who's walking around and he's like looking for stuff to eat, and then he hears a rustling in the bushes and he's like, oh shit, it's a saber-toothed tiger. And so he's got a spear out. He's like, and then out of the bushes just comes his friend Og, who's eating berries. He's like, oh, what's happening? And then they both go, oh my god. Oh, I thought I was going to die. I thought you were a saber-toothed tiger. I thought you were going to stab me with that spear. Oh, wow, buddy.
That's what makes that's what makes comedy coming in the middle or right after horror so refreshing. Is that horror is such a heightened emotion, and that comedy afterwards is this great release.
It's very horror. A regular horror film is very similar to comedy in the sense that, for one, it's something is far harder to accomplish than it looks.
Right, well,
to really scare someone is kind of the coin flip to making someone laugh.
Well, and it's the beauty of filmmaking when accomplishing that. When you raise the stakes so high, we've written a couple of horror comedy scripts, and raising the stakes as high as you can, and then having those true, honest moments within the highest. Like, your life is on the line. You are going to be in some way eaten or bit or whatever it is, but to be able to have like a human conversation there.
Yeah.
That's the best place for comedy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it.
Horror and comedy works on the same rhythm. It's set up and punchline.
Yeah.
Set up and punchline.
And in a lot of straight horror films, like John Carpenter's Halloween, like a lot of horror films, there's a lot of humor in them.
Yeah.
Wait, you think there's humor in Halloween?
Sure, like any horror movie that's got the false jump with like the cat jumping out, and then the audience like gasps at first and then laughs, and everyone's in on the same joke.
But I don't see that as like a comedy, like something like Shaun of the Dead is like I see that as
That's
a
a
real
horror
horror comedy. But Halloween,
Well, to be perfectly honest, I think, not to interrupt, I apologize, but I think American Psycho is the funniest movie to come out in the last 30 years.
It's hilarious.
Really?
Oh,
I think it's
hilarious.
I found that so
amazing.
disturbing. I didn't
You know
find
what?
that funny at all.
We were all kind of doing our research about this kind of stuff, and I found some list, and it was on there in the list of horror comedies.
Interesting.
It is super, super dark satire.
Yes, it is.
Pitch black humor.
Very dark. I mean, and it takes a very. Brian and I are pretty. We're pretty broken people.
Yeah.
And, it takes,
You're gonna fit in just fine.
but it takes a lot, to really kind of push it. And that movie, oh my god, I laugh.
Are you wearing a raincoat? Yes, it is, Paul.
And I'll sit next to people watching that, and I'll laugh, and I'll get a look of like, I thought I knew you,
Yeah,
but I don't know anything about you.
That's probably me
well,
looking
talk
at you during that movie.
Talk about jet black humor too. I think Human Centipede.
I was
which you
just
mentioned.
about to bring that up.
Human Centipede.
Human Centipede?
Hilarious.
Have you guys seen the Human Centipede?
Yes, and then I immediately regretted it. I'm not as squeamish I'm like raw head Rex.
Yeah.
The more blood, the better.
Yeah.
I'm for it. I looked at that and went. I watched that movie and then immediately went, "Hey, there's someone that never left film school. There's someone that's still trying to shock and awe." I'm like,
See,
no.
we love that. Well,
You didn't find a
couple of us
the
really
scientist
love that
funny
movie.
in that movie.
What's that?
You didn't find the scientist humorous in that film?
No, what I
Dieter Laser is so great in that movie.
I found it sort of pretentious in sort of a bourgeois way, where it was just like,
wow, how about this?
Yeah, you're really just trying to how shocking and avant-garde I'm being. I'm like, you know what? I don't know. If you want to watch that type of movie, then watch Audition. If you want to watch a movie like that,
I love that movie though too.
Yeah,
a good film
that
too.
one's not funny though.
No, it's not funny.
No.
But it's definitely made with more craft and artistry than that guy gets credit
Well,
for.
I would argue. Now, I haven't seen, from what I've heard of the sequels, that they go way more gratuitous, more over the top. But that movie really, to me, I thought, considering the absurd plot of that movie, for me, I thought they really pulled it off. And
I don't think it is
for
very gratuitous,
performances,
actually.
and
go ahead.
and it's very, and when it comes to when you think of we're going to make a Human Centipede movie. How do we do this? And I would argue that they did it with a lot of taste. They didn't really show someone's ass sewed to a mouth or anything like that.
Well, isn't that the premise? Is this scientist wants to connect three people together,
like a man?
So it's
Like my birthday.
like someone's. So there's a guy. And then there's his butthole, and then there's another person stuck to his butthole,
My
and then
mouth.
someone stuck to
And your
their
problem
butt.
is
No, I'm just saying.
Your problem with that is?
that is not. You find that humorous.
that's the typical spring break when I was growing up.
That's San Padre Island for you.
Oh my God, was that you?
See, for me, it's more like
I was the tails.
something like Ghostbusters. With
Horror comedy,
from the classic
Ghostbusters doesn't work,
80s.
though.
Yeah, and there are certain kind of horror comedies. There are horror movies that have elements of comedy in them, and then there are straight out. The comedy is more than the horror, I would say.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that with Ghostbusters, we use that as and Justin Ware always brings it up when we're working on it. Okay, great. We work in comedy. That's what we've chosen to do with our lives, and we can write funny moments here, but at the end of the day, if the movie's going to work, if you remove the comedy from the movie, it still has to be a horror movie. And
Completely
Ghostbusters
agree.
is kind of the perfect example of that, because the premise and everything around that, I mean, you take all the comedy out of that, that's a fucking
It's a scary story.
horrifying
Yeah.
concept. Yeah,
No,
totally.
totally.
And we're talking about the '80s film with Bill Murray.
Yes.
Well, talking about the 80s, how about I was
what other Ghostbusters is there?
Well, if you
Not
remember,
the one by Eisenstein.
no.
is it?
In the 1970s, around 75, there was a TV show.
Oh, okay,
for
all right.
kids.
A TV show though,
called
yeah.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah. With Larry Storch.
Larry Storch and Bob Burns, who
And
played
Bob Burns.
who played Tracy the Gorilla.
Tracy the
But
Gorilla.
if you think about, like, in Ghostbusters, there's because to build off what Neil was saying there's a very underrated and constantly overlooked scene where Winston Zeddemore is going like, you ever read the Bible? I do. You know, this stuff about people raising from the dead, and it's like, I think that's what we're looking at right now. And there's a brief
scary, yeah.
brief moment in the movie where we're like, oh shit, is this the apocalypse?
Yeah, it gets real there for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, I agree that again, whenever you're doing a horror comedy, the horror has to be real.
Well, speaking of 80s horror, American Werewolf in London.
Another perfect example.
And that's
perfect example?
That's a
I don't think it's
script.
a perfect example.
That's a
A
script,
horror
though.
comedy? Oh, yeah.
That's a script that Landis was, I think, shopping around for a long time, and nobody wanted to do it because it's so odd and so different. You know, it was just too weird. It was like a straight horror, but then some comedy in there too. But he pulled it off, and then I think it was influential too because he saw like kind of like other horror comedies. You know,
Yeah,
like,
not just from the transformation scenes and those effects of Rick Baker that became famous
but
for,
just like kind of the hip kind of horror.
having
comedy.
Griffin Dunn just sit in his flat in London with his throat torn out and be like, hey man,
Hey, David.
That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's so good. And what I love about that movie too is that it's a slow build. You know, the werewolf doesn't show up right. You know,
Oh, no.
all the werewolf stuff isn't so blatantly obvious in the first 10 minutes of the film. It's a slow build to that when
And there's some
finally
shocking
see
violence in that movie
Yeah, yeah.
too.
the werewolf
I constantly
on a rampage.
I think that horror comedy lives on a scale, and on one end you have American Psycho, all the way on one end, and all the way on the other end you have Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Totally.
Yeah.
Sure.
And then everything,
Which I
kinda
also
goes in-
enjoy.
Yeah, everything kind of goes in the middle, and then every once in a while you have a Ronin, something that doesn't quite fit on the scale, like Naked Lunch, which I think is horrifying.
That's you consider that a comedy?
I think there's a lot of funny. Well, yeah, when the,
I agree with you.
Yeah,
I would
yeah.
agree. I would agree.
Dark.
There's,
when the mugwump turns to him in the bar and goes, "How's it going, Bill?"
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, that's fucking amazing.
And that's a very specific kind of almost. It's a very specific Cronenberg style of comedy.
Oh, don't get me started.
That's-
Nightbreed is amazing.
And he's
like
so
Nightbreed.
good in that.
Well, I'm talking about directors that Brian De Palma. You know, a lot of what he does. You look at Carrie; it's a straight horror movie, but it's also you could argue that Carrie is a very tongue-in-cheek comedy that's kind of masquerading as a horror movie, or just kind of going through those motions.
I'm convinced.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
I don't find Carrie to be a comedy at all.
I would disagree with that myself.
Well, I
don't think it's that fun. I think it's heart-wrenching.
Well,
It's-
I wonder if there are certain movies that that tonally shift over time, because when you watch them in the moment, oh my god, this is a horrifying movie. But then you look back and you're looking back at
20
an
years
era,
later,
20
yeah.
years later, you're looking at an era and you're going, oh wow, that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek moment now to me because I'm reflecting on a decade, and maybe
Sure.
its initial intent isn't there, but then there's that kind of side category, like you're saying, these
Yeah.
categories that don't fit on the scale of like, oh, this is funny, but maybe not for original intent.
I think, like,
Right.
speaking
Looking-
of De Palma, I
looking
think
back on it.
Yeah, I think Snake Eyes. Looking back on that, I think that was Brian De Palma just punking the entire film industry. He was just like,
It worked. It worked for me.
yeah. But also, I think RoboCop is a horror comedy. It's again,
Yes,
pitch
RoboCop has
black,
a great
RoboCop.
sense of dark humor.
pitch
to it.
black
Yes.
satire. Yeah, especially the director's cut, where it's just like, oh, here's an extra 5 minutes of us blowing Officer Murphy away.
Right.
And
Well, we've
then,
talked
like,
about
laughing.
Starship Troopers, and
Yeah.
that's absolutely
Totally.
genius,
Subversive.
genius satire.
Absolutely,
It's
love
like
that movie.
you had all of America rooting for Nazis.
Exactly.
You're rooting for Nazis. We dressed up Doogie Howser before Neil Patrick Harris had his comeback. We dressed up Doogie Howser
should
like an
play more
SS
Nazis.
soldier.
He looks. There should be.
He's afraid.
Yeah. But you found that funny?
Yeah.
I laughed my balls off.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
I did too.
I don't know
Yeah.
what movie you
I know. I watched it in the theater, and then 25 minutes
too.
in, when they did the first commercial of like.
Yeah.
The best way to become
Yeah.
a citizen. I was
Yes.
like, oh, you fucking brilliant piece of shit.
Really?
No, because I'm from a small town in North Carolina. I know every redneck's like, yeah, let's blow up some fucking bugs, man. I'm for it. I'll give away my freedom. I don't care. They blew up my hometown of Brazil, and I was like, oh, I know what you're doing, you beautiful German
Yeah.
bastard.
Wow.
Yeah.
So fun. And then
Wow.
after everything,
Yeah.
seeing it from that, and the fact that it was like, It was like, it's an ambush. I'm like, the idea that cockroaches are smarter than us, and go fuck yourself. I was like, oh, so good. Well done.
With that movie, and I think that this is the reverse example, but there's also this kind of genre of horror comedy that exists that is sequel based, where the original, and I mean, it happens in everything from the 80s.
Oh, yeah. I know where you're
it's
going
all
with this.
sequel based. So the original Leprechaun, that's a straight up horror movie. Nightmare on Elm Street, horror
up horror
movie.
movie.
Yeah.
Then Friday the 13th,
Yeah.
horror movie. And then the sequels, the 5 sequels off of them,
Yeah.
the campiest things in the world.
Freddy Krueger on
Freddy
a-
Krueger
on a-
especially
Right.
just became
On a
Yeah.
skateboard.
He became a board-spelled comedian.
He was on a fucking
Hilarious.
skateboard. He was on a skateboard.
Yeah, it was
The
bad.
leprechaun in the hood. They have to kill him by getting 4-leaf clovers into his weed,
And you're thinking,
and that's how he dies.
yeah. Why didn't I think of it?
Unbelievable.
Spoiler alert for those
Yeah,
folks. too.
Sorry.
No. There are some people who haven't seen
No,
these.
every-
Maybe you're new to
I
this
don't
whole
think we're spoiling
podcast
too
thing.
much.
Every
Do you know what a
person-
leprechaun is?
Every person that
Yes.
listens to this podcast has
Yes.
watched that movie.
Thank you.
No
Thank you very much.
Yeah, but you bring that up. It's like the death of any horror franchise is when you send them to fucking space.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Jason
you know
in
what?
space,
No.
Leprechaun
Well,
in
no,
space.
Totally,
no,
totally
Jason
disagree.
X, though, is
totally
a lot of
disagree.
fun, though.
You're
That's a
totally
fun,
wrong there.
energetic
And now
film.
I have to really
Name
put
me
my
a movie.
foot down.
Name me a movie where they go to space. and that makes it
Jason
better.
X or Jason 10, however you
You're-
want to,
you're done.
is so funny.
Really?
It's so
It's more
great.
imaginative to-
It is
I'm
absolutely,
sure I'm
it
seeing
is
some.
absolutely a send up of the genre. And when they
And
go,
insult to my intelligence.
no.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I guess comedy is subjective because I didn't think any of the jokes in that movie were funny.
Well, hey, when they do the whole,
Hey, that guy's fucking an android bitch. Great for him. I don't. Why? Why am I care?
it's more of a send up a tonal thing than it is individual jokes.
Fair enough.
But I would also say the scene where they go to the ship's holodeck. And you have the two girls
Yes,
in the
yes.
sleeping bag going, we want to have promiscuous sex with someone. And like that whole thing was just, it made me laugh.
And which
It
one
was
is that?
very funny.
Which one? When
Jason X.
Jason X.
Jason
Friday
yeah.
the 13th, part 10.
I think that when Alien went to space,
It was always in space.
It
What
really,
are you
yeah.
talking about? Alien did take place in space.
no, the first one when they were in a cottage in North Dakota.
No,
I
no.
thought that was
No.
the one that really got.
That's
and
all
then
my-
with the space.
You-
and they jumped
Are you?
the
I think you're
fucking
thinking.
shark.
Is that the ice storm you're thinking of?
I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of a vacation when I was
Yeah.
7 years old. I went
Yeah.
out with my family.
It has nothing to do with Alien from back.
Well, how
Yeah,
about-
the minute they go to space, I just immediately stop laughing.
Out.
I just,
I'm just
yeah.
like, oh my god, I can't laugh at this.
Well, how about like the horror genre where things are done to death, where then the genre actually turns on itself and they would actually do straight out spoofs, like the slasher films, for instance, in the 80s. You started to see a bunch of slasher spoofs, like
Oh, like
Student Bodies,
Student Bodies.
Right, yeah.
Pandemonium.
Well,
with
isn't
Tom
the whole
Smothers.
well, what
April
about
Fool's Day?
what about the whole scary movie franchise? I mean, that's those are straight up comedies.
Though, and
Right,
that's,
right.
that's
With
interesting.
the
that you
law
bring
of
that up.
diminishing
I mean, there's
return.
how many? There's like 5 of those, Sean.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
But
there's
that's
tons.
interesting you bring that up because it's interesting 'cause those are straight up comedies.
Yeah.
Those are straight up comedies, but it's so far removed that I couldn't call that a horror
It's almost like
comedy.
airplane slapstick. style,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Well, it is.
Like
It's
anything
the
goes.
same.
Just throw everything against the wall and see what.
But I think like something like Slumber Party Massacre is more of a horror comedy because they're like, hey man, it's a rock star. He came back to life and now he's killing girls with a guitar that has a giant drill in the end. It's like,
That's
yeah,
believable.
Yeah. And
that sounds like a great idea. Let's make it.
as long as it's in the realm of possibility,
Yeah.
I'm there. Yeah.
Right.
But I think we all agree that the best horror comedy ever made is Jekyll and Hyde together again, right?
Oh my god!
I can't go with you on that.
Oh my god, Sean! I
I don't know if I even
I just
remember
threw
that.
that
Oh,
out
I
there.
did. It was
The guy from Fridays,
Fridays,
right?
from
Mark
Fridays.
Wakefield, he turns
Wakefield.
into a pimp. Like a pimp,
That's
Mr.
right.
Hyde. He gets a gold tooth and a
Yes.
hairy chest when
Yes.
he drinks the potion.
Come
on.
It's all there.
You know what, Sean? I'm actually
book is much
I'm
better.
surprised at you because I thought that film was absolutely dreadful. I mean,
It's pretty bad,
It
but
was like
come on.
such forced.
What a concept, though.
I mean, I remember when the film came out, and there was probably about like 20 people.
82.
Yeah, there's like 20 people in the auditorium. And I mean, and you could tell on the screen they're playing out these bits, knowing that people in the audience are going to be laughing, and no one was laughing. And I remember watching it, going, "This is so hard."
It's like Jerry Lewis did a pass of it, like in his old age.
I think it's right there with Vampire in Brooklyn as.
Oh, that one's bad. Yeah, that one's really bad.
I think. Go ahead.
These monster spoofs, didn't the legacy maybe sort of begin with Young Frankenstein in 1974, where afterward, it was fair game. Well, okay, let's cover Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Let's cover Dracula. Now let's, and even Mel Brooks went back to it.
But I loved Young Frankenstein though.
Young Frankenstein's a classic.
But that's done well.
Because they treated he was very passionate about the story of Frankenstein.
Well, I just recently watched
Frankenstein.
That's a great moment. It's a great moment.
I recently watched an interview with Gene Wilder, and some things that I didn't know about that movie is that I guess he was sort of the spearhead of that film, and even wrote the whole scene where he arrives at the train station. Yep. He wrote that, and it didn't really change at all. It was pretty much word for word the way he wrote it in the film.
And my understanding is it was his idea. He wanted to do the whole dance sequence, and Mel Brooks was on the fence. He
thought it was too over the top.
He thought it was too over the top, and that's actually one of the funniest moments.
Yeah,
in the movie.
It's too over top. You have the guy. You have the guy trying to desperately not give the Heil Hitler sign. So it's like
right, exactly. Yeah.
Come on, Mel.
You had no third act of Blazing Saddles. Really? This is the problem?
You know what's great?
Stick out your tush.
I see Son of Frankenstein now, and every time I see it, and there's that little curly-haired kid, and he's Dr. Frankenstein's grandson. And I think, well, he grows up to be Frankenstein.
Grows up to be Gene Wilder.
Well, Young Frankenstein works.
Very young
though.
Gene Wilder
That has an amazing cast too.
Yeah, and that movie works though because it's such a love letter to the classic Universal films. Like they really knew those films.
It's one of the best things Gene Hackman's ever done in his life, and most people don't even think of it.
Yeah.
Don't think of it.
And not only that, Sean, they actually shot a lot of it in the same sets that they
Universal
used for the
backlight.
original
That's
1931 Frankenstein with Boris Karloff.
Awesome. Literally the same equipment from the lab. They used a lot of that stuff.
Strickfaden, right?
He got credit.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I think modern era for me, like talking because we've talking going back, but I think most people when they think of horror comedies, they think of modern era where we're super nerds and geeks. We're like, yes, of course, Young Frankenstein, 1942, Harold Lloyd. I think for me, it's a three-way tie. Modern horror comedies. It's obviously Shaun of the Dead.
Yeah.
Great.
That's the touchstone.
That's number one.
Slither. I don't think Slither gets enough.
Slither.
A little forced.
I like Slither.
Little forced
But I say
myself.
modern era, but you also it's a love letter to the genre.
Yeah.
And then I think The Lost Boys.
The Lost Boys,
Okay.
you think is a comedy?
Horror comedy. Yo, yeah.
Really?
The three young boys are cracking
I know
jokes.
the movie.
You've left out Return of the Living Dead, which how can
See,
you,
to me-
that's in the really
You don't like Return of the Living Dead?
I like Return of the Living Dead, but you take out that one scene with brains, then it's not really. There's nothing really funny.
Oh, really?
no.
Wow.
There's a punk rock girl who's naked and a zombie now.
No, that's not the funny part.
no.
That's,
Ernie and Bert.
that's the other
James
part.
Ernie Clue Gilligan.
I know. I think Return of the Living Dead is actually once you factor in the ending and really think about it, I think it's super dark and depressing because I'm like, yeah, they absolutely would fucking destroy an entire town and cover it up.
That threat is
dark
very much
humor.
dark.
It's certainly
Yeah.
dark humor.
But I mean, that's more depressing than funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would probably go the way that you're looking at that. For me, like Lost Boys, I don't find funny at all. I find that there are
Really, the last line
really.
of the movie is like, "That's what I always say about it. Too many goddamn vampires." It ends on a joke.
Well, it ends on. I don't really
not
see it as a joke.
not a laugher for me
No.
though.
Well,
necessarily.
I would
and bad rules, bad vampire rules in it, and that's something that pisses me off too. Which is if you're gonna do horror, play it right, get the ruals right,
Stick with the rules.
If you're gonna do a vampire movie where these are gonna be traditional vampires that are killed and have aversions to a cross and everything else, that a regular vampire is killed with a wooden stake, not an antler.
Right. Fair enough. Jesus Christ.
Good night,
Neil,
everybody.
Shut the fuck up, Neil. Neil, shut up.
Guys, I've just got too many opinions over it. Okay. But going to what Brian was, Brian's first one out of the gate was Shaun of the Dead.
That's the touchstone.
I mean, that's it. That's
That really surprised
is-
everybody. That
and
yeah.
and I would say one or two over the course of history that I think I've enjoyed as much, and it's Young Frankenstein and it's Ghostbusters. That movie has kind of redefined that genre for me, and I think for fans that didn't even realize they were fans of that genre.
And you saw a lot of zombie comedies come out of the gate after that too.
I just watched one the other day on Netflix, which was actually pretty good. It was Cockneys versus Zombies.
Oh yeah,
I've heard.
I think I've seen the trailer to that.
It's you know what? It's very well done. It's very well. It's the biggest name in it is the guy that played Flap Top from fucking Snatch. or Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Oh boy, yeah. No, I'm lost
you
in
got
that
me
one.
there.
But most of the
You got
time
me
when you
there,
see
buddy.
blank versus blank, you're like, oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Unless there's shark in it.
Oh, man. They shot this on their iPhone 5.
There's one that came out on Netflix a few years ago. Was it like zombies?
Yeah.
And let me say,
How many A's is that?
Like I think
5
it
A's.
was 5
It was
A's,
5 A's.
12 H's, an exclamation point.
Zombies.
But I will say, I watched that movie with limited expectation, and it was a very low budge, well done movie. But they took it from a perspective of they are the zombies, but zombies don't see themselves as zombies. Like, you don't realize you have a problem in the moment. And taking it kind of a dual perspective. Okay, when they're talking to each other, this is how they're talking. But when other people see them, they're zombies.
And
And do they look normal when they're
talking to
when
each
they're? I
other.
think I have seen this.
You know,
Yeah.
I was blown away. I was like, all right, let's see what the thing that keeps popping up on my queue is. And I watched it, and I was like, holy shit, look at this.
Warm Bodies did a good way with that too. With
Yeah,
the,
that
with the
wasn't bad.
subtitles.
That was much better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty
But
good.
there's a lot of good movies in that sort of genre now, like Dead Snow, and what was the one with Santa Claus?
Oh, rare imports.
Rare
Exports.
exports.
Yeah, rare
Yeah.
exports.
God, I watched the trailer for that. I was like, "Fuck yeah!"
That's pretty cool. Have you seen
Dead
Troll
Snow's-
Hunter?
Troll? Of course.
Troll Hunter was great.
Talk about a horror comedy.
Oh,
Yeah.
only on this podcast. Have you seen Troll Hunter? Of course. Go fuck yourself for even asking me that question.
I'm not a Philistine.
And Dead Snow 2 came out, right?
Dead Snow team. Yeah,
Wait,
that's
what is
our
Dead
friend-
Snow? I've
our
not seen
very
this
good
one.
friend
Derek Mears,
Derek
yeah.
Mears, who plays the new Jason Voorhees, is in that. It's awesome because Derek is on paper, like photograph, one of the scariest human beings.
Horrifying human being. 6'7",
bald, no eyebrows,
muscular, the
just
most
cut out of
muscular
wood.
man.
Just,
Yeah.
just pure. Like his skin has a shine to it that doesn't belong in nature. But he's like the nicest teddy bear of a human being. He's like from Comedy Sports. He does comedy all the time.
Whenever I see him, right before we left for Slam Dance, it was the day we were leaving. I went to go buy shoes. I walk into a shoe store on Melrose. He's there, his girlfriend, very nice girl. As soon as I turn the corner, and we lock eyes, and it's just the sweetest hug. Oh, buddy, how are you? Meanwhile, like, you're standing 100 yards away, and you're like, oh, fuck, turn around.
go.
Did you crawl out of my nightmares?
He's also he plays one of the Predators too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he
Okay.
plays one of the Predators.
Oh, that's
What a
right.
great
in
career.
Predators.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he does a show over at Comedy Sports called The Resistance, which is it's an improvised stunt action show.
Yeah.
They do all their own stunts. They got mats out everywhere.
Wow.
And
It's
we're-
really
I
well
wanna
done.
see that.
We're actually going to be doing that in the next month or so. It's Dr. God, our comedy group that did Bloodsucking Bastards. We're going to do that with The Resistance and do some type of action insanity.
Oh,
I know
nice.
this is news to you.
Yeah, it
when,
is.
when I was hugging Derek for an extended period of time in a shoe store. We talked about doing it.
Which was horrifying but hilarious.
Hence the horror comedy.
Yeah. Wow.
What other horror comedies are we living? I feel like there's the
Well, what
entire
about-
era of the late 70s, early 80s where you could get things on VHS and Betamax.
What about Theater of Blood with Vincent Price? See,
Horror comedy. More.
That's before my time, and I can enjoy them. All the
what
Vincent
do you mean
Price
it's
stuff.
before your time?
Well, I'm 38.
Oh,
you know,
my
like,
God.
yeah.
What about?
Let me tell you, Sonny.
What about Love at First Bite?
Oh no, fuck that movie.
I'm not crazy about that one.
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
It was a big
it's
hit at
pretty
the time.
forced.
Though. Very.
How about
it was-
Fright Night?
Okay,
Fright Night.
The original Fright Night.
Fright
the
Night.
original.
Original Fright Night is awesome, and I think the remake Fright Night doesn't get enough credit.
Really? Again?
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't know.
I think
No.
I had such
I-
low
I can't even-
expectations.
Well,
and
I
then
did
it
too,
was-
and I know and
better
it was
than mine.
lower when I saw it.
I did love Colin Farrell.
Yes.
I thought he was great.
Yeah, but
I really
the-
did.
But
But
the
everything
movie-
else, no.
But the original Fright Night, of course, is
Great.
top notch. And someone,
Okay.
we've been getting very good reviews about Bloodsucking Bastards, but the two that I was like, it was like has echoes of Fright Night, and then and also Near Dark, and I'm like, well, then I'm done. Tap out.
You don't like Near Dark?
I love Near Dark.
Oh, great!
yeah.
Oh,
No,
phew.
if you're going to make anything about my movie compared to Near Dark, which I think is about as perfect of a movie as can be.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah.
Near Dark is great.
Yeah. If I ever met
I think we should make up now.
If I ever met Bigelow, all I would do was just force her into a
Yes.
corner and be like, "Tell me about Near Dark."
That movie is so good. To me, that movie was like the artier, better Lost Boys.
Oh, it's a coming of age movie.
Yeah.
It's the idea of like you breaking away from like it's literally the like I don't want to grow up and be the farmer that you were, Dad, and like all that, and then realizing
And then now, oh please, I think I want to be the farmer that you were.
But you were talking about keeping things real in the world. How do you feel about Near Dark though? Because they gave him a blood transfusion, and that cured his vampirism, and I'm not sure if that's true.
Within the context, I bought it though.
Well, here's the thing.
Of course, I bought it. Yeah.
It's kind of like,
but you're like
Larry and I.
Yeah.
Larry and I have
Here
had
comes.
this ongoing
Yes.
feud.
I can't do this again.
We've had an ongoing feud
I'm
about
getting a headache again.
about running zombies
Oh
and
my
walking
God.
zombies.
Oh,
and to me, I don't care if they walk or run.
No,
I'm with you.
No,
Because
no,
I'll tell you why.
You should care. 'cause
And
it
I'll
makes
tell you why.
absolutely
Wait,
no
hold on
logical-
now.
Okay,
Let
go
me
ahead.
finish
I'm
this.
with Larry
Let me-
on this.
But,
I'm with
okay, but
Larry.
let me tell you. Here's my justification.
Okay.
Is that there are no zombies, so they can what?
Let him.
Neil,
No,
Neil, maybe
no, no.
you should tell him.
No.
Listen, Brian.
Brian, let's let him go.
I've
Let's just
been
let him
meaning
do
to
his
talk
thing.
to you for a while.
No, I'd like to watch a man hang himself, please, Neil.
Go ahead, Matt.
And
please.
with the vampire thing in Near Dark, I was like, well, yeah, this might be a little sketchy on the science, but there aren't any real vampires anyway, so I'll just go with it.
God, please,
help
Larry, help
it's
me
like,
here. Help me.
let's just make up new rules. Let's have no rules. Like vampires can run around the daytime.
If you make a movie where you
just
explain all that stuff and have it as part of the story, and you explain it intelligently, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Didn't we establish when we were on the Mansion Mayhem radio show on Playboy Radio that the dictionary definition of a zombie is slow?
Yes, we did. Yes,
So we can't come up with anything new because Merriam-Webster
No, absolutely not. No,
You're
that is the
Merriam-Webster's
rule.
bitch.
If you're right, that is the rule.
I completely agree with Matt on this. I think you're all way off the mark.
Because it's full of shit.
Because it's fucking fiction. And
It's
you're allowed to
fiction!
spin things around.
It's the rule.
It's like, listen.
There has been a documented instance of a zombie cat that clawed its way out of a grave. And
Yes.
you can look it up.
Right.
All right,
And
listen.
it's slow.
Listen,
It's a
that's
slow-moving cat.
They even do it even in 28 Days Later. If they're running fast, they're not zombies. They have a rage disease.
That's right.
They have a
But
disease.
wait, we just
They're
talked.
not
We
zombies.
just talked about how we were on board and better than expected with warm bodies, right? And
All those guys shuffle. They all shuffle.
right, but then how many? He talks eventually, and then
He
becomes
thinks.
a fucking thinks. His brain works.
His
and then all of a
brain
sudden
is
he goes-
gone.
Well,
It
you
makes
just don't
no-
know about the power of love, Neil.
Listen, Brian, that's the podcast we're going on next week. Heartbreak Party.
Okay, you know what? Again, heartbreak party.
I got really excited for a second. You were like, that's the podcast we're going on. I'm like, oh, is it Huey Lewis in the News related? The Power of Love podcast?
Yeah.
I don't know
I
if
do-
this is it, but I feel like this is it.
I do want to go on the Huey Lewis in the News podcast, just to
I-
tell them to go fuck themselves.
Dude, wait a minute. I'm a fan.
no.
Dude, they played at my high school, Matt. I love Huey Lewis in the
They
News.
suck
Matt,
so
you just-
hard.
Oh,
Matt,
God,
I just stuck up for you. You
I mean, I
motherfucker.
love
You know,
them. I think they're great. If they were zombies, I'd love them.
Okay.
horror and comedy. Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead 2.
Evil Dead.
Good
Now
example.
I love you again.
It's so funny. You know, what's interesting is I followed that. I remember the first Evil Dead.
Yes.
There was an article that came out in Fangoria magazine.
That is correct.
And it said it was this low budget film. The creators threw everything that they possibly could with their low budget. With their low budget, they stop motion animation, forced
Yeah.
perspective stuff. And so I waited. I waited in Northern California. And this film, they only made 10 prints. I think it slowly made its way across the United States. Finally, it gets to California. And I was so excited to see it. And I'm talking about the first Evil Dead. And I went to the theater.
Shot in North Carolina. Thank you very much.
North Carolina. No, and some was shot in 16 millimeters, some was shot 35.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
16 millimeter was blown up a little bit. And yes, the story was a little funky. The acting wasn't that great, but it blew my
There was such
mind because
passion
they
put into it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
it's
funny.
scary.
It's very scary, and
it
it's
is.
what's interesting. I thought is I didn't find Evil Dead to be funny, but then it was so successful they kind of were able to retell the story, and they had more money to make Evil Dead 2. They kind of had to retell the story,
Right.
And then they threw in these Sam Raimi, great director.
I saw Evil Dead 2. There was a great video store in my hometown of High Point, North Carolina called Video Adventures, and they had a great deal. It was $5 for 5 movies, and you could keep them for 5 days. And I was like, I'm fucking in. And so, 12 years old, riding up my bike, and of course, like we all do, the cool high school kid behind there. You want to see a movie, kid? You should watch this. It was Evil Dead 2, and I was like, what is this? And so I go back, and then I got the original Evil Dead. I was like, oh, awesome. And then I went back and watched it. I was like, holy shit, you're just allowed to make the same movie again?
Right.
The exact same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, but you understand, like,
of course.
I mean, it was the first one was successful enough that they got enough money that they said, okay, we're gonna, because they kind of retell it, but it's like that's like the first quarter of the film, because then it goes off on.
But it takes you. I know what you're saying. It's like you see that movie, and then first you're confused that it's the same movie, and then you get to a place where you go, oh, it's funny. You get it.
Like a Looney Tunes cartoon.
Yeah.
Seeps in.
I hadn't seen it until a couple of years ago, and a good friend of ours, who's a director, he directed Zombies of Mass Destruction, which is another one that falls in the genre and is really well done. And his name's Kevin Hamondani, and we were doing like a movie night, and he brought that one up. He had it with him. I was like, I've never seen that movie. And he looked at me, and I thought, is the sweetest man in the world. I thought he was going to strike me in the face. I thought he was going to strike me
really
in the face. And we sat down and we watched that movie,
Evil Dead 2.
And then I went, I know nothing.
Yeah,
I know absolutely nothing.
I actually really enjoyed the remake. Am I alone in that one?
Wait, Evil Dead?
I have not
The Evil
seen
Dead
the
remake. I just like because they went a different route with it. There was some legitimately scary stuff. The stuff with the fucking nail gun is horrifying.
Did they go?
I am
Did they
glad
go
that they went serious.
Did they go with humor at all though in it?
No.
Wasn't.
And I actually appreciate that.
Yeah,
because
me too.
You can't remake a classic.
Well, what did you
that way.
guys think about Medieval Dead or Army of Darkness?
I love Army of Darkness.
That was almost
It's
like
a different kind of movie though.
It is a different movie, but I loved it.
It was like an homage to like Ray Harryhausen films.
Yes, it was.
Absolutely.
Right?
Stop motion animation skeletons.
Good, bad. I'm the one with the gun. Like all that shit.
Fun, really fun.
You used to love me, baby. You got real ugly, real quick. All that shit.
I mean, yeah,
Give me
it's a
some
quote
sugar,
machine.
baby.
Yeah.
I'd love
totally.
that.
Yeah, shop smart, shop S smart. This is my
Fantastic.
A week doesn't go by where I don't tell someone that this is my boomstick. And take that what you will.
No, Sam Raimi, I think, is just a genius. He did a fabulous job on
I
those
think
three
Sam
movies.
Raimi's made the best superhero movie of all time, which is Spider-Man 2. I think it's perfect for Sam Raimi and his distilled
Well, when he
best.
did the first,
I'd argue Spider-Man 1.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
I do not like Spider-Man 3 though.
Oh no! As soon as he starts,
it's
he
terrible.
becomes emo and starts jazz dancing.
You know what?
Oh,
Sean?
no, that's
Sean,
the best part.
Terrible.
He becomes Buddy Love in The Nutty Professor.
Oh, well, we're talking about Sam Raimi in horror comedies. Darkman.
Yeah.
Darkman.
Yeah.
I love
I like
Darkman.
Darkman a lot.
I love Darkman.
And Darkman has a good humor
yeah.
in it.
Yeah.
yeah, dark
Yeah, but like
humor.
when he's grabbing the hand and everything's like goofy and like weird, and then it's like, and then of course Ted shows up. You're like, oh, of course, Ted Raimi's here.
right.
I had a acting class
future Darkman.
where Larry Drake was my teacher.
Oh shit! If we're talking Larry Drake,
Uh-oh.
we got to talk Dr.
Dr.
Giggles.
Giggles. I knew you were going to bring up Dr. Giggles.
Yeah. I saw Dr. Giggles in the theater, and I was like, thank you. My last date with her, because she was like, what? This is stupid. And I'm like, you are an insane person.
Now, the funny thing about Larry Drake is, I don't know if you guys remember, but Larry Drake was on a very popular TV show at the time
Yes.
called L.A. Law.
Yes, he
and
was.
He played the mentally challenged kid or a man who worked at the law firm, and
Benny was his
Benny,
name.
and he was amazing. I think he was nominated for Emmy. I'm not sure. And
Bunch of times.
this was his. Well, actually, he did Darkman. He was in Darkman. You saw him in a completely different way, and then he did Dr. Giggles.
Well, and he was also in Dark Night of the Scarecrow.
Right, well, he also played a mentally challenged guy.
Well, that's his thing. you know.
That's a great horror movie.
I go back to watching L.A. Law and seeing, him, Larry Drake playing Benny and getting nominated for Emmys, and I just think of poor Corky from Life Goes On. Who's like, I can't believe this motherfucker. I read The Raven.
Basically, look, the scripts for that show just were not the greatest
No,
scripts.
they were not.
You know, he did wonderful performances, but if the writing's not there, you know.
But Dr. Giggles.
To just go to television for a second there, you know, outside of feature films, there are things that exist in the world of television.
Oh, sure.
And web
Buffy,
as well.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And all
Sure.
theirs.
Yeah,
Although the movie,
yeah.
I liked the tone of the movie better than I did the TV
I like
show.
the movie too.
I
one was-
completely agree with you.
Not to say anything bad about the TV show.
No,
TV
it's
show is
great.
great, but I like the tone
Those
of the movie.
are also different cells, though, too. Like, those are two different demographics. When WB or UPN or CW, I don't know if they were CW at the time.
I didn't get into Angel. You're definitely. This is your jam.
I like Angel more.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love Angel.
Not that I like it more. I just got on board with it from the beginning, and then I rewatched Buffy, which was good. But Angel. Is
The
what I
only
started
episode
with.
of Angel I like is the one where the children's television studio has been taken over by demons, so all the Muppet puppets and then they curse Angel, and Angel turns into a puppet. And there's a badass scene of them like walking down the hall in slow motion, but Angel's a puppet, and then like Spike's there. And
I've not seen that. I want to see that.
Wow.
It's incredible.
I have not seen
It's
that
an
one.
evil Sesame Street where it's like
That sounds
Wow.
great.
They're like, hey, like it goes in on the close up on the television showing the show, and he's like, hey, I guess we learned the lesson, and then the puppet just like looks into the camera and is like, you must join us.
Whoa.
Join, like it's really cool.
It is, and I feel like a lot of the shows in that world, and I throw Supernatural in there as well.
Boo.
No, listen, a lot of the things in that world, they get the stigma of like, oh, this is on CW, or
Yeah.
if it predated CW, whatever.
Modern CW with Vampire Diaries and all that horse shit now. Fuck that.
Well, yeah, sure, but and I'm with you on some of it, but I feel like a lot of it gets.
Some of you put the caveat in there.
Well, no, because Supernatural's on that network, so I do enjoy that show. So with those shows and you know Buffy and Angel, a lot of people I think give it this is a tween show,
Right,
and,
right,
and-
right,
But if you
right.
go back, it's not a tween. No,
The writing is so good.
It's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I don't put them on the same. I don't put Supernatural on the same level as those shows, but it has a different kind of feel that I enjoy.
Yeah, some of those horror comedies, like we were talking about before, from like late '70s, early '80s, you can get on VHS, like the Geek, Rawhead Rex,
Oh, yeah,
Pumpkinhead.
right.
I'm a huge fan of
Pumpkinhead
Pumpkinhead.
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
And those are not traditionally thought of as horror comedies, but since they are, I guess even hindsight, not that like Pumpkinhead is very well made, so I'm not
Right.
talking about that. But some
That's
of the
more
other
like
ones,
a dark fable. Kind of,
yeah, some of the other ones are like they're so bad it's good. I mean, like we haven't even talked about. Let's talk about Troll 2.
Oh yeah,
And that's
You want to
also
talk about
that
horror
that
comedies?
sequel
It
category.
wasn't
that's
intentionally
an inadvertent horror comedy, right?
but it's still considered
Absolutely,
a horror comedy.
absolutely.
Exactly.
Which sprung into this thing. Larger
Let's go
than
into this
itself.
town of Nilbog. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, yeah.
I would also say there's an entire genre we haven't talked about. When you talk about Gremlins, you talk about Critters, you talk about Ghoulies.
Gremlins
You know,
2.
it's-
Oh my God! Can we say Gremlins 2?
I love Gremlins 2.
That's one. You know what?
Really?
I
I
step back
think
for a
it's
second.
hilarious.
That's one of my favorite.
Let me
Really?
At a
Really?
certain
No, no, no.
point, Hulk Hogan, they break the fourth wall.
Well, they do it
Yeah.
several times in that
It's
movie, right?
unbelievable.
When Phoebe Cates starts telling the story about how the Abraham Lincoln impersonator molested her, they're like, yeah, we don't have time for that right now. I laughed my balls off. That's amazing.
Well, it's just like we said before. Sometimes these things degenerate or just morph into
They
a
just
Warner,
morph into something
a Warner
strange.
Brothers
Of course.
cartoon, which
Yes.
is where Dante was going with that.
Yeah.
I recently rewatched, and I try to do it every few years. Gremlins 2, and it's the kissing gremlin.
Doesn't Tony Randall do one of the voices?
Yeah. He does one of the
my God.
voices.
He does the voice of the smart Gremlin.
When you're sitting in the theater and the film starts to break, and then they cut to the theater and it's Hulk Hogan.
Even
and
before
he
that, they
starts-
start doing
the
shadow
hand
puppets.
the shadow puppets, and Hulk Hogan turns around. Let me tell you something, Gremlins.
A lot of people pay good money to see this. You mean the movie that we're watching right now? And it's not a documentary that happens in real time.
No, and you know what? I think for formula, and if it wasn't that movie that was done in that way, it wouldn't work, and you'd hate it. But for some reason, it just plays for me. I don't know.
I'm with you. I actually like Gremlins 2 better than Gremlins 1 because I didn't really like Gremlins 1 that
Yeah.
much. I thought it was too cutesy or I didn't know what it was trying
Really?
to be.
I think
Yeah,
Spike was,
I agree.
I think
Yeah.
Spike was legitimately scary as a character. Like
Yeah.
he starts
Well,
Yeah.
once you got to that.
But see,
Yeah.
when Phoebe Cates went to tell the story about her dad, and then
Gremlins
see,
too.
some unfeeling people find it very funny. But I didn't find that
But
funny
that was
at
meant to
all.
be funny.
Well, you know what?
It
Though,
wasn't
you know what?
funny
Though?
at all.
Yes, it was meant to be funny.
I always
I did
wished.
not laugh.
I always wish they made the original script of Gremlins because the original script of Gremlins was not like a Spielberg-y film at all.
It was a Western.
Very dark.
No.
It was a very dark. It was a very dark horror film. It was a very more serious horror film. I would have been interested to see that.
We got to get that film made.
There was more emphasis on the, I believe, the neighbor who was like, he saw them in World War II. Like in the movie Gremlins, they played as a joke, but he was like, no, this in the original
it was
script.
a straight right.
Yeah, it was just like he was having basically PTSD. You know, like,
but you're right though in that it opened the floodgates of like every kind of Gremlins ripoff, Ghoulies and Munchies.
I don't remember the Munchies.
There's a couple. Critters. There's tons of them.
And although not necessarily on that, but close to it is Puppet Master.
Oh yeah,
I enjoy those movies. I love those movies.
I love those
Puppet
movies.
Master.
And Dolls, of course, that we talked about with Stuart Gordon.
Yeah, Stuart Gordon, that's right.
If there's a series that I could write a next chapter of, because I think they're on 10 right now.
He's been talking about this for like
9 or 10.
For the last 2 years, I have been. They're on 10 of Puppet Master right now.
Puppet Master in Space.
Oh, God.
no, because they don't want to kill the fucking franchise.
But they crank them out. I think they're at 10 right now, and I would love to, because those puppets, it's all about design. At a certain point, it becomes about physically what they look like. To make those puppets any other way, I don't think it has the same power.
My perfect thing is like
that black and white one.
I like to think of like the meeting between the director and like the set designer, or the prop people, whoever was coming up with those puppets. And I just, in my mind, it's always like, so here's what I'm looking for. Like, I'm the director right now. Here's what I'm looking for. I want you to take the sax player from the Muppets, right? And I want you to make a ghost version of him and then put a knife on his hand where his hand should be. Yeah.
And then they turn the piece of paper around and like, something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to take
You're inside my head.
I want you to take a Russian circus performer and give him a screw for a head. It's like, okay, all right. Yeah, I think we can manage that.
Finally, someone who's speaking my
Make the Nazis
language.
Slightly more lovable.
Slightly more with like a big smile on his face.
They're also great because they're kind of like almost like old school effects. They're physical little
I love that
creatures.
stuff,
It's just
yeah.
so great.
Well, that's
physical effect.
for our flick. I mean,
For
Brian,
Bloodsucking Bastards, I made a hill that I was going to die on. I'm like, we are doing practicals.
That's
We're
awesome.
doing practicals.
I respect that
want
so much.
Yeah.
I want a 1 gallon milk jug that's chopped off at the end on one end of a fire extinguisher that's just filled with CO2, and then you just dump as much blood in there as you can fucking fit, brother. And do it. I want to get. I was like, you can't do too much blood here.
Because there's nothing worse than fake CGI blood.
No, it makes me want to
It
die.
is
Yeah.
the worst.
It's only second to post production slow motion.
Yeah.
No, we'll just remove some frames. We'll just pull some frames out. No, we'll slow it down.
Yeah, we'll just double all the pixels. It'll be great.
No concessions to CGI at all?
We use some CGI to sweeten stuff, and I'm not opposed to that. I get it.
Sure.
But for the most part, when you're making horror comedies, and even horrors, I think the practical stuff works better because it's tangible.
It's visceral, yeah.
It has 3 dimensions. It's why children who are exposed to the Muppets fall in love with them.
That's a very good point,
Feel
yeah.
good, and they're tangible and all that. Whereas, kids who watch, for as successful as the Pixar movies are and as great as they are, I don't think anyone watching Up is going to be like, oh, man, can you please, Mom and Dad, can you please get me this old man that I can hug and kiss at night while I go to bed?
Well,
You want Kermit.
I have made my own Ed Asner figure. And many a night when my wife is away,
Oh, Mr. Grant.
I cut out the back of him and put a small canned ham in there and just let the night take its course.
I want to make an amendment to something just because.
Okay.
I know
You're fucking Ed Asner in the small of his back?
Well, hey, don't judge me.
All right, fair enough.
Your fans are film fans. They understand how it works, and I just don't want any goddamn complaints on Twitter. I meant ad frames for slow motion, and I realized what I said. As soon as I said it, I went, you know what? I could let this go on Broken Heart Party.
Neil, I'm
not on this.
Neil, I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't want to say anything, but I'm glad
It
you
was
corrected.
embarrassing,
I'm
but
glad
you know, I
corrected
just
yourself.
you know what?
I was
don't
going to cut it out, but not now because you've corrected yourself.
Yeah.
No, I realized it. And
Calm down, Reddit. He's admitted his mistake.
I make fucking movies. I know how frames work.
I just picture you waking up at 3 a.m. going, "Add frames!" No!
Like George Costanza coming up with the best comeback 3 days later. You should have been there, Jerry. I was this close.
You know, you brought up Muppets.
Muppets.
We've talked about animated stuff. What about the classic Scooby Doo? That's, I mean, you know, now Scooby Doo. People forget that Scooby Doo, the animated Great Dane,
was originally written as a drama.
No, it wasn't written as a drama,
Western.
but came out in 1969, Matt. 1969.
Oh, I know.
And
I was there.
Yeah, I was there too, and I was a huge fan. The thing about Scooby Doo that always got me, though, that I was really
Were you a huge
irritated
fan?
with- I was a huge fan of Scooby Doo.
Really?
Yeah. The first series.
I'm listening. Yeah, I'm
the
in.
first series of seasons of Scooby Doo, they were a little more serious. Before the Harlem Globetrotters or Phyllis Diller came in. Or
That's when I really started tuning in.
But except when Don Knotts shows up. Because Don Knotts is a
Don
pimp.
Knotts, yeah. Don Knotts was great. But I was
turned
always
into a
hoping.
fish.
The thing that always bugged
Ghost
me
Mr.
was
Chicken.
I was always waiting for Scooby Doo and Fred, Daphne, and Velma to eventually find something that was really a ghost.
a real
It was
monster.
There was it was always like it's Mr. Johnson from.
they were always-
That was always my
mystery.
problem with it.
They were always based more in classic mysteries than they
Yeah.
were.
Yeah, he was
agreed.
They were Columbo more than they were.
But see, what's really cool is when you watch what sold me as a kid. When you watch the little previews where you see these spooky things or like apparitions or
The
something.
monsters were cool.
I mean, they were really cool
Yeah,
looking.
no,
and totally fake.
I have a thing that I have to speak on about this because,
All right.
First,
Scooby-Doo thing.
full disclosure, we are very, very good friends with Matt Lillard, who plays Shaggy in the movie. So it's like you're never going to get me to say anything bad about Scooby Doo or that man.
Yeah, totally.
Here's
He's
my
the best guy
thing with
out there.
Scooby Doo.
My favorite character.
You always want them to find a real ghoul.
Yes.
I had a different thing. There's an improv show called The Bat where it's basically done in the dark on a microphone. It's like an improvised radio show. And this is, I got to play it out. It's one of my favorite things I've ever done. Here is my theory, and here's the scene that you never got to see in Scooby Doo, but you knew that happened.
Okay.
Late at night, Scooby's asleep in the back of the Mystery Machine. The other three are off getting, whatever they're doing on that. And it's just Shaggy, like, with his sitting against the wall of the back of the Mystery Machine, knees drawn into his chest, and he's just going, Scoobs, you're my best friend. And, well, we've been spending all this time traveling around the country, and I've come to a realization that we're the real monsters. Everywhere we go, we think it's a ghoul or like a haunted deep sea diver, but you take off the mask and it's just an old man who's trying to cheat people and greed, and there's no love anywhere in the world, Scoob, and I just feel like that's why you're my best friend, because you're a sweet animal that just loves human beings. And Scooby shoots himself, and I mean Shaggy shoots himself with a .38 revolver, and I just stepped away from the mic for 3 minutes and let people sit in the dark with a corpse. And then when I thought they had the nervous titters of everyone like, okay, this is very uncomfortable, this is not a comedy show anymore, I just came back to the mic and went, Shaggy? It's my favorite thing in the world.
Brian,
Shaggy just having a
awesome.
moment.
That's genius.
Brian,
Shaggy having a moment where he realizes that humans are the real monsters.
True.
There are no ghosts and goblins. It's just people trying to steal from old ladies.
Dark subtext.
Yeah,
in all
right?
the episodes.
Brian has been my my best friend and my comedy partner. We've probably shared the stage. We've probably done over 2,000 improv shows together.
Easily.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I want to fuck you. I want to take this friendship to a different place.
Oh, thank you.
No
higher compliment, I guess.
I don't know if I want to bring Scooby Doo there.
look.
I think
Hey. If you guys need to spend the night here, we got an extra room.
no
questions
No.
asked.
Oh yeah, you have an extra room filled with like puppet heads and monster.
There's action figures.
yeah,
And Scooby Doo.
But I have a feeling this love will work around that.
Yeah.
through it. Yeah.
I just love that idea because it was meant to be part of the counterculture and all that,
Yeah.
and that you couldn't believe in anything anymore. All the institutions were dead.
Yeah, but I will say this though. I mean, if you follow Scooby Doo, classic Scooby Doo, there is a series of Scooby Doo cartoons cartoons called, I think it's the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo.
Yes.
With Vincent Price, right?
Yes, with Vincent Price.
Right.
He's just great. Hey, Scooby. I mean, he's awesome. And those are actually, I think, because I think they actually make Shaggy wear a different colored shirt, and I think it's to kind of suggest that it's an alternate.
Shit's got real now.
Yeah, well, or like
No, it's like Marvel. It's like Earth 2.
Yeah, or it's like a
Different,
completely different universe because now the monsters are going to be real.
And don't they in the movies, at least the second Scooby-Doo movie, don't they deal with real monsters? I think they do.
A little bit, but then it shows up that it's Scrappy Doo, and everyone goes, "Oh, God damn it!"
See, that's when
Scrappy Doo is the real monster.
But see, that's the thing that it really pissed me off as a kid. I mean, actually, before Scrappy Doo. There was what's it?
Scooby Dum.
Scooby Dum.
Yeah, that's right.
Who was?
Right.
Oh, God, that just
Was he like a Southern?
It insulted my intelligence.
He was like Gomer Pyle.
It was horrible.
But
It was
with
horrible.
Marmaduke jeans.
Oh my God!
I think the best take on Scooby Doo was the guys when oh God, what are they talking? The Venture Brothers. I think they did the best take on the Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
Where Fred was a cult leader. And like Velma was like a feminist,
Wait,
like
what?
Nazi.
Yeah.
Oh, you gotta see it.
Such a great.
And the way that they treated Scooby. They treated Scooby as if he was the dog from the Son of Sam. You must kill Shaggy. Shaggy. And at one point, they, because the Venture Brothers are a bunch of clones and all that kind of stuff. Spoiler alert. Sorry. It's been on for forever. You watch it. And then they finally run into it, and there was a flashback where they had actually killed him, and they came in, and there's just this great moment where I guess you weren't lying, Shags. And he was like, and this dog fucking talks, man. No one's believed him the entire time. But he's like, today is my day. This is the day of reckoning.
There is a porn version that I saw.
Seriously, Matt.
This ain't
What do you
Scooby Doo Triple X. That's
all I'm telling you is that it was surprisingly well done.
Tasteful.
Characters were done well. The only weird thing is that Scooby's not even in it. He calls. He calls on the telephone after they are done having sex.
You know what? That makes sense because as soon as you have a dog show up on a porn set.
Yeah, no, you don't want to do that.
that film is not
yeah, they're shutting that down.
on a different camera.
Yeah,
Right, well,
Chatsworth is on alert.
But he says disgusting stuff on that
Yeah,
phone call. It's disgusting.
Put it in your butt.
Horror and comedy. I just want to say, getting back to animated dogs, if you will, and not porn. Have you guys
what's with
familiar
you?
with? Have you guys
Sean,
familiar
keep us
with?
on track over
Familiar,
there.
familiar with great animated film Frankenweenie.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. That because I love that film.
I like it, but
stop motion
Yeah,
animation,
I love the stop motion stuff.
black and white, and it does have elements of comedy all throughout the film.
Yeah, but didn't you feel like it? Because it was based off of
his short film.
His short film.
I'm talking about Tim Burton. He did a live action
and
Frankenweenie.
Tim Burton basically like someone let him do that. Like, you've earned it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's the Frankenweenie that I wanted to see.
Sleepy Hollow is my cutoff for him.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't even care about. I like Big Fish is good.
What about
but
Ed Wood?
I did love.
Ed Wood is before Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah, I love
Ed
Ed
Wood.
Wood, and I love Sleepy Hollow.
I agree.
Yeah.
I like Sleepy Hollow. I like Ed Wood. I think Big Fish is way overrated, to be honest.
It's a love letter from sons to fathers, and I can like that.
I don't care for that.
Well, but
I don't.
to get back on track.
Human emotions, not a fan.
Struck
get
a
back on-
chord, did we?
To get back on,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
After the show, Matt will be going to
that's
do
why
therapy.
I think that's why Batman Returns is his best film, and because it's him going through his childhood fear that every child has, is that my parents don't love me, and I'm not. They're not really my parents.
That is my favorite of the early Batman films.
As is mine.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
but even that for me is like none of the Burton Batman films are great to me. I mean,
No, they're
really
definitely-
not.
It's all
up there.
style though, but
Yeah.
but I'm glad that he went for that. It was
Yeah.
like let's
Yeah,
just throw
that's
out,
true.
let's just make
I
this
can't-
all style and have fun.
I can't believe they allowed him to make that because it's
Yes.
even on paper you're just like, really, we're going to murder a lot of babies? That's what we're doing? This is our fucking summer tentpole picture, Tim. He's like, it'll be fine. We have
First one was a hit. Trust him.
we have penguins. It's fine.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice.
Mattel is making murdered babies.
Beetlejuice.
Speaking of horror
Obviously.
comedies,
Beetlejuice is
huge,
great.
huge hit, big following. Hard for me to warm up to. I was not
Really?
Oh,
I enjoy that. I do like that.
I would say that I might have left that off of my top 3 list before. I think I have to make it a top 4 because I put Beetlejuice.
Can
in
I
that.
ask?
I do enjoy that
Can I
one,
ask a
yeah.
question to James? Can I guess what scene lost you when you watched it the first time?
The first one? The whole thing?
No, Beetlejuice.
Oh, the entire movie
Beetlejuice.
lost me. None of it.
No, let's.
Can I guess when you watched it for the first time, can I guess the scene where you were like, all right, I'm tapping out, fuck this movie?
Okay.
The dinner table Harry Belafonte scene. Yeah. That's where it loses everyone. Yeah. Jump in the line.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. And then because it's jarring at the end where like then the shrimp squid hand comes up and hits everybody in the face. You're like, no, you haven't earned this scary part.
See, I think I was at an
That
age
feels like
when I
a
saw
studio note, doesn't it?
Yeah, but I was at an age when I saw that movie, I think, where
that
when I
has
look
lots
back
to do
on
with
it, I go, oh, okay, maybe not. But at the time, I think I was young enough where I watched it and I was like, oh my God, that the whole thing happened. Oh my God, yeah, the hand comes out. And then I go back, I'm like, all right, but I'm not going to let this kill my childhood. I'm not going to let this kill my introduction. We're okay still. We're fine.
Go ahead.
I think that movie, Michael Keaton wasn't in it nearly as much in the first cut of it. And they went back and put a lot more Michael Keaton in it.
Yeah, well, I am the biggest Michael Keaton whore, and this is not from... Thank God he's having a wonderfully deserved renaissance with Birdman.
Sure is.
Oh, so good.
I've been a huge Michael Keaton fan. As an actor, Michael Keaton is the
he is
one
definitely
career
great.
that I would love.
And the other guys, he's just tremendous.
The other guys, Mr. Mom, Gung Ho, One Good Cop, Pacific Heights, Multiplicity, and also being Batman.
His student films.
He's if you've seen
his 6th grade play,
Game 6, like he is such a variety and such a breadth of being of range that I don't think he really gets enough credit for, and I'm so glad that he's getting it now.
I
the way
absolutely
he
agree.
interacted with his mother's placenta.
See, I know we're talking about horror comedy.
You know what? He intuitively knew Meisner with his mother's placenta. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the kind of thing of like, okay, no one really thinks about Michael Keaton until you take in his, filmography.
Right, yeah, it's
And then
pretty
I defy you to like replace him with another actor that was of a similar level during that time and say that the movie would be better.
Except for Batman. Except for Batman.
Except for Batman?
Yeah. Not a fan of him as Bruce Wayne.
I fucking disagree because you cast Bruce Wayne, you don't cast Batman, and no one
Yeah,
can
you
pull
do.
off.
No, not a good Bruce Wayne. That was my problem.
Really?
No.
I highly disagree.
No, terrible.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago,
You want to get nuts? You're like, yeah, that's a guy that I can
This is
believe
the
dresses
first-
up like a fucking bat.
This is the first time I've checked out in the middle of the podcast.
What do you got, Neil?
a couple of years ago, Brian, we talked about this.
shit.
I did. I had a small part in a horror movie.
Oh my god! How have we not talked about this yet?
What?
Well,
When is this?
I realized that the clock is ticking, so I wanted to get to it.
Do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
No,
so
they can edit this. Fuck this. This is going.
No, we'll go as long as we can.
okay, good. All right, so
Just make it quick.
So
don't tease a motherfucker. Let's go.
so Corbin Bersen made
L.A. Law from L.A. Law.
Yeah. He made a number of horror
I
films.
think
He directed a few, and one of them is called Dead Air. So you're thinking the
I don't
dentist.
know. I was going to say the
thinking
dentist.
dentist. No.
So he directed a bunch of them, and one of them was Dead Air, and
This is Talk Radio the movie.
Yeah,
Like Talk Radio the horror movie.
well, it's basically and kind of in the world of our just like a production point for our film of hey, we need one location, we need to shoot this thing fast, and so they shot it at a radio station, and I got a call to come in from a friend of ours, and who would watch Dr. God perform back in the day.
Yeah.
And I got there. I didn't know Corbin Bersen was directing. And I go into hair and makeup, and I look over, and he walks by, and I go, oh, my God, that's Roger Dorn from Major League. And it turns out he was directing. So we get on set, and I have one scene, and he comes through, and he's kind of walking us through the steps. But then he stops and he puts his hand up to his eye and he starts walking around the room going, okay, all right, so you're here, I'm directing.
I'm on cocaine.
Well,
I'm directing, you're here, I'm directing. Okay, so
Neil
you're
is playing Corbin Bersen, and I'm playing Corbin Bersen's subtext right now.
So he's looking at me, he's like, okay, so you're walking in, you're stopping, I'm directing, okay, so now we're
I haven't been to
over
the bathroom
here.
in 5 minutes, but I'm going to take care of that real soon.
Okay, so now your next move is here. You're going to say this. I'm directing this moment. I'm directing, I'm going through
I was
it.
on
I'm
LA
directing.
Law as well.
I'm directing, and we're good. Okay. Dude, it was. I'm sitting in that moment.
Was he literally saying, "I'm directing"?
I'm saying
this
the
is word
words
for word.
he was saying.
This is not verbatim. This is a direct
the
quote.
moment.
Unbelievable.
Direct
But
quote.
let's just say he is a very talented actor, and we're just speculating about he could have been very much into the scene. We don't know.
Oh, and
Maybe he just enjoyed the taste
I'm
of
just
his own
saying-
inner lip.
I'm just saying.
I'd like to say this too. Like I had that experience. I'm not taking away a negative opinion of that. Like he was.
Everyone has their own process.
Look,
Did he direct you well?
I had 3 lines.
That's not the question.
Anything.
Neil.
Yeah. It was fine.
We're talking about Corbin.
No, look,
Bersen.
I knew exactly what it was. I walked away going, you know what? Like, I have no negative opinion of that. It was just very unique. But yeah, he didn't do it in a way where in the moment I was like, this is a crazy person. In the moment, it was so kind of like inviting, or it didn't seem out of place. And then I thought about it afterwards. Brian and I were at a comedy club that night, and I was sitting there and I'm talking him through it, and I'm like, yeah, now that I think about it, that's actually I feel like most directors don't say, I'm directing, and now I'm directing, and we're directing. Oh, God.
That's clearly something that was an actor first. I want to go off of 2 things from that because it made me think of the Dead Air thing. I just watched. I thought was a really good indie horror comedy, very dark humor, very sort of like, ooh, this is how the world ends in a small room and we all die. There's a movie on Netflix that I saw. It was shot in Canada. It was set in Canada. It's a small town radio station. It's
Pontypool.
Pontypool is
a work
great.
of genius.
It's so well done.
And that was originally a radio play.
It was and it's so well done, and the casting is so brilliant.
One of my favorites.
Horror
I love
comedy.
that.
And fantastic,
Horror comedy.
fantastic idea.
I believe it's horror comedy where the same way that I feel like American Psycho is a horror comedy because it's such dark and black. But then also when we talked about The Dentist, Stepfather. Where do we all come in on Stepfather?
Stepfather, one of my
yeah.
favorites.
Yeah.
One of
I
my
like
favorites of
Stepfather a
all
lot.
time.
Yeah.
And that's one of those ones where I would say is actually a legitimate horror with comedic undertones, overtones.
Yeah, the comedic
Yeah.
undertones are there to relieve the tension of how fucking creepy,
Scary.
He is. Yeah.
Stop.
Terry
trying to-
O'Quinn is just brilliant.
I still can't the first time I saw the X-Files movie in the theater and he showed up and he's just staring at that soda machine. I'm like, yeah, you want to have sex with your stepdaughter.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah, please stop looking at me
Please stop
from the screen.
Please stop making the bad version of the Crush. Stop doing that. Stop it.
One piece that we've talked TV and we've talked film, but web stuff, and I know that's a dark hole to go down.
It is a dark hole.
But there's one thing that always stood out to me that Ed Helms did. It was the zombie. I forget the name of it, but the zombie piece where he plays a zombie, but it's just the most casual zombie, where people just like anyone else.
Yeah,
you know?
except we eat brains.
We eat brains.
That's a thing that happens. Yeah.
The tone of that.
Ed Helms is so
Hey,
good.
Well,
if it grosses you out, I guess 2 men showing love for each other grosses you out too.
Yeah,
you don't do it.
It's a beautiful tone of, but it brings up the thing of like using a common horror piece to just do straight comedy.
Let me ask you a
versus
question
making it horror.
for Larry's sake. Ed Helms, does he run fast in this fucking web series?
Yeah, I would like to know that.
All right, I'm walking up the front door right now.
Has anybody
And to
seen?
think, Brian, to think after your Scooby Doo thing, I was gonna fuck you, but no.
Slow
said make
zombies, lot cheaper.
Yeah.
Has anybody seen What We Do in the Shadows?
Not yet, but I'm
I
stoked.
hear that's,
Me
I hear
too.
that's good.
Yeah, it looks really funny.
It's sort of like Spinal Tap with vampires in New Zealand.
You had
Really?
me at
Cool.
Spinal Tap with vampires.
Yeah, totally.
Right. That was one of the best things that happened to us at SLAMDANCE is that we randomly, thank God that we are friends with Joel Murray.
Oh, God.
Because we randomly turned around and he was taking a picture of Michael McKean and 2 tourists. And then another tourist came up and she was like, were you in Happy Days? He was like, I was not. Someone told me you were in Happy Days. Well, that person is a liar. Laverne and Shirley. He's like, yes. And then she started to be like, so the sequence with the bottles and like he fucking shot it.
Yeah.
He's like, he's like, no, that was in Burbank at the Budweiser factory. And then he was like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, well, we're trying to kill time and have burgers. Like, and then
I looked over, I turned around. So in that moment, I turned around and he's like, "Yeah, I'm just trying to kill time." And I'm like, "We're going to lunch.
You're welcome to join us."
And he did, and we got to, and Joel's been.
Then that fan becomes your hero.
Oh, the best acting that you saw in Park City that entire week was the 5 members of Dr. God not geeking the fuck out with David St. Hubbins.
Yeah,
dude, it's Joel Murray and it's Michael McKean and it's the 5 of us and Emma Fitzpatrick, who also is a female lead in our movie and is phenomenal. And we're sitting there and it's 5 boys just talking. We're just chatting, but we're under the skin going. And Emma sitting in the corner going, "All right, these boys are having nerd moments. This is cool."
Okay.
I was on the Santa Monica Pier once, and Harry Shearer asked me what time it was.
Yeah.
And I couldn't shake that off for hours.
Your watch broke. Your watch broke in the moment.
And you were like, "It's a rock and roll creation."
I told him it's going to 11.
Wow.
And then he started walking faster.
Horror and comedy.
No, remember that's from the movie. Hey,
Well, speaking of Michael McKean, where on the scale does Clue count as a horror comedy? Because people do die.
It's
And
but then
it's more of a thriller. More of a thriller. Although great.
Yeah, so
great. It's just a murder mystery.
Yeah,
People do die.
I think we need to. We can't really
End the show.
We can't end the show without at least bringing up one of my favorites, which is
Here we go.
Frankenhooker.
Oh
yeah.
my gosh!
I have mixed
forgot
feelings.
about that.
I have mixed feelings.
Really?
I was a
Do tell.
I was a fan of Frank and TJ Hooker. It was their Halloween.
One of my
show.
favorite non-existent cop shows.
As Neil knows,
The pinnacle of horror and comedy.
Frankenhooker, directed by Frank Henenlotter. I love it, and especially for the performance of James Lawrence, who is basically
sounds like you really like the movie.
It's the Dr. Frankenstein of the show. I call him Sid for no reason.
I
at
really
all.
enjoy Anthony Hopkins in the quiet of the sheep.
Wait! You liked him more than the gal?
I love him. Oh no, I love him. She's funny,
was,
but
Penthouse Pet, right?
he is so great.
But she does some really interesting things, though. The whole facial expression.
I do enjoy it. But I'm a Frank Henenlotter fan.
Yeah, Basket Case.
Basket Case is lovely.
Yeah, Basket Case is great. Frankenhooker, I think, is just too far on the exploitation side of it. For me, I'd rather watch Reanimator again.
Well, you're going to get no.
Yeah.
Well,
You're going to get no arguments here. We love Reanimator.
Well, Matt,
think so.
I mean, you have that Reanimator tattoo just on your neck right now.
I'm sitting on a Reanimator pillow
Unbelievable.
because I have a condition.
Never get Reanimator tattoos on your hands or your neck because the judge can see them.
Now, do you know Brain Damage?
Oh, of course.
Love Brain Damage.
And we haven't even gotten to the early films of Mr. Peter Jackson, like
Sure, Dead Alive.
Dead Alive.
Meet the Feebles.
Feebles.
Talking about Muppets.
Banned for 30 years in this country.
Wow.
Couldn't even get it in.
I didn't know that.
I had to watch it. I watched it in film school. It was a copy that had Japanese subtitles.
I watched that one. It was from a Laserdisc, I
That
think.
is correct,
Yeah.
sir.
And now that was banned in America?
Brian Henson was like, "Fuck you, my dad just died. There ain't no goddamn way this is coming into the U.S."
Wow.
He spent a shit ton of money to make sure that didn't get here.
That is amazing.
I'm sitting between Matt and Brian, and I just watched. This is why Monster Party destroys every other podcast in this genre.
You're right.
I looked at two adult men look at each other and go, "Yeah, I had to watch that version with Japanese subtitles." Well, I saw that on Laserdisc, and they were gonna hug and high five, and that happened in front of my face.
I'm fairly confident Matt and I, 30% of the movies we watch involves tentacle rape. And let's just be honest. Come on.
We are going to Japan soon.
This
so.
is hentai. Are you going to Japan, or is Japan going to get invaded by you?
Japan is always with us, my
Wait,
friend.
are you all going? You're all going to Japan?
We are planning on going to Japan.
Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Monster Party.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Let
Tokyo.
us.
Where's the Hentei Love Hotel?
excuse me, where's the place where I could dress up like Gamera and then just spin around real fast and then vomit lightning out of my fucking feet?
Horror
Maybe
and-
you need to open that in Japan.
Right over here.
Horror and comedy. Horror and comedy.
We're at the sushi bar. Could you please
trying to
take
bring
this?
it back.
Can you please take this piece of octopus and put it? No.
No, well, here's the thing: that you're going to go to Japan and you're going to be really disappointed because everywhere it's like no gaijin, no gaijin, no gaijin. Don't look at this part. Don't look at
No,
this part.
they love you. I've been there a number of times, and boy, they are happy to see Americans.
Yeah, but when
except when you do things with tentacles at the sushi bar, and then they ask you to
you
leave.
try to go to a place where it's like, oh, and in this place, it's just 7th grade panties. And this is like oh no, we don't.
No, we took a wrong turn.
This is sake bar.
We have a friend. We have a friend who used to, when she was younger and needed money out of college, she would sell. She would wear her panties for a day and sell them online.
Yes, we do.
And that would
Yeah.
be
That would wind up in Japan.
regularly
And you know what?
purchased.
You know,
yeah, no,
and
of course.
that's another podcast.
It's
That-
a victimless
that's another-
crime.
that's-
So
yeah.
horror and comedy. So what was
It can be comedy depending on the panties.
the horror in this is that it happened.
So tell me, guys, where can I see this film that you guys?
Okay,
Bloodsucking Bastards.
so it'll
us
look
more.
at www.drgodcomedy.com. Announcements will be made right now. The deal just went through today. We've got a
Okay.
little bit of time. So this year, it looks like it's going to be 10 cities to start.
Okay.
nationwide.
Okay.
Around the country, and then and we'll take it from there.
10 major markets.
10 major markets, so you'll be able to see it. If
Look
you're-
for it.
If you live in North Dakota, you're fucked.
Okay,
but
and
outside
the name,
of that,
the name of the film again?
blood-sucking bastards.
Blood-sucking bastards.
I'm very excited about this, and I wish you guys all the success in the
Thank
world.
you.
Well, and thank you guys so much for having us on. We've
This
all,
is
you know, we've
this is
worked-
the most fun I've had in fucking forever.
really.
Great. No, seriously, come on anytime because this is what we like to do. We
And
like
as you
to-
can tell, we just kind of scratched the surface of horror and
yeah, we
comedy
could go on arguing
Oh,
for
hours and hours.
I
Of course.
clearly feel like I have met 4 men who speak my language.
That's
Yes,
and please, it's as for your group too. Is there anything else that we can like?
Yeah, so on Mark Cuban's network, Access TV, we're in the 2nd season of Mockpocalypse. Dr. God is the production company on that. And
Neil Gargiulo and Dave Park are the executive producers. They do all the heavy lifting.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so our 3rd episode just aired tonight, Metal. And by tonight, I mean the pre-aired date. You can edit this all out if you'd like. But we've got 13.
We will.
Yeah.
Keep it general.
Let me try it again.
Yeah.
Mockpocalypse, Thursdays at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific on Access TV. And it's a talking head comedy series that tackles topics of music. Nobody dies, unfortunately.
Nah.
Now, to our listeners, please remember to follow us on Twitter at Monster Party HQ and like us on Facebook at Monster Party TV. Find us on YouTube, also at Monster Party TV. And if you're listening on iTunes, please write a review if you can take the time.
Yeah, write a review.
Yeah.
Let us know what's going on.
And
What do
thank
think?
you so much once again,
Thank you, gentlemen.
Brian and Neil.
This
Thank
is
you.
great, guys.
You guys
we've
are
got-
awesome.
We've got to work together for a few years, and I'm glad we got to talk dead things tonight.
I'm crazy about you guys.
Scoobs.
I am Matt Weinhold.
I am Shawn Sheridan.
I'm Larry Stroth.
And I'm James Gonis.
Keep America strong.
Watch horror comedies.
Shaggy.